All right, influencers, welcome to another Influencer Jam session. I've got on the call today one of our older clients. He's been with us for a little while now. I'm going to get Michael to introduce himself and tell us a little bit about what he does, who he does it for, and the industry he plays in. Take it away, bud.
Yeah, g'day Max, g'day guys. So we're all about helping on engineering projects to define, manage and close out interface issues on their projects. So my background is in engineering predominantly. So you're talking your big gutsy engineering projects.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, so that kind of gives us a bit of a scope because we play with like coaches and consultants at all sorts of levels, and you're at a very high level from a deliverable perspective. What specifically got you started with TIP? What was your challenge?
So my big thing was working in this kind of area where you've got these big players, and I've always been an employee of those big companies, and generally there are only a couple of those big companies out there. So here I am, sort of a sole trader, effectively, trying to take on those big billion-dollar companies at their own game and trying to find a niche where I can fit in.
Yeah.
And so that was a big reason for joining the influencer, was realizing that I'm nowhere near as big as a $40 billion company, but I'm actually competing with them to run large projects. And how do I get myself in there and do that?
That sounds like a pretty daunting challenge.
Yeah, it was.
So tell me what happened. You started with this. What happened then? Walk us through from start to up until a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah. I mean, I guess as a lot of you guys would have seen on Icon, I'm a bit of a sort of hard on the sleeve kind of person. So it actually took a while, but it definitely brought some success for me. What I realized over the 6 months or so is that it is a really long game with the kind of clients that I work with. They're not the kind of clients where you connect with them, banter with them a bit, and then win $5,000-$10,000 worth of work. You might know someone for years until you eventually get a job out of them. But that job, as I've just found in the last week or so, could be $400,000. So for me, it was all about the just realizing that slow and steady will eventually get you there.
And what was that process like when you first started, 3 months in, 6 months in? How did that start to come to fruition or not come to fruition? Yeah. What did that actually look like?
Yeah. Look, I definitely am by no means an expert. I've fallen flat on my face quite a few times. There was a period in the beginning of this year where credit to you guys. I even wanted to quit. I wanted to throw in the towel. And you guys basically wouldn't let me. You said, no, look, let's just keep going. Let's make this work. So it's all about, I guess, making those mistakes, learning from those mistakes, but most importantly, consistently showing up every single day and consistently working at it. Because even though I've had probably a couple of hundred no's through all of my thousands of emails, the half dozen yeses that I've got scored me almost $500,000 worth of work.
Yeah. And before we get into that, because that's the very exciting bit.
Yeah.
Just quickly dive into what happened probably about a month ago when you were sitting there in the office of one of your clients and you were halfway through one of the Accelerate sessions with Andrew Rana. That was kind of one of the low points, right?
Oh, that was probably the worst. Like I was, we were in one of the Accelerate sessions and I literally had Andrew and Rana on the screen, was watching, joining in, sitting in a meeting room. And I basically got tapped on the shoulder by the client and they just said, look, you've been hanging around too long. There is no more work for you. You've annoyed a few people by consistently bugging them trying to look for work.
Was that via LinkedIn, via your strategy?
It was via LinkedIn, yeah. And there's a whole story there as well. But I've found there's 3, 4, 5 people in the office had all received lead messages off me. And engineers, being a bit introverted, can sometimes take offense to that.
Right.
I think, like Andrew says, people don't like to be sold to. They like to be led to a buying decision as opposed to sort of having something in their face. And yeah, look, I mean, it backfired on me. But interestingly, I decided, after chatting with you, actually, decided to keep going.
What did that look like? What you were at, like, because that was a pretty shitty point.
Oh, it was pretty bad.
Like I was there, right there with you on a few of those calls. That was a pretty terrible point. What was it that took you from that to go, nah, I'm in this. This is what I'm doing, to keep going? Like, why did you even bother?
Well, interestingly, it was one of the books you actually suggested me to read, which was it's called The Dip.
Yeah, okay.
And me as well, sort of realizing how to make things work for myself. I'm not a good reader, so I thought, well, shit, find a way around that. And I discovered, well, you can get the same book in an audio book. So all of a sudden, it put an idea in my head that you don't have to sort of follow the completely orthodox path. So I thought, all right, well, bugger it. I'll get the audio book and I'll just sit in the car every day and listen to that. And then it sort of went through. In the book, they talk about the fact of you get to a certain point and then you have a dip or a valley of death, which sometimes is so painful and you feel like you're losing, you feel like you're getting nowhere. But the good news is if you can persist with that, you can eventually get to the other side of that, and then you sort of then begin growing again. And I sort of thought, well, I'm at a point where I can throw in the towel, go back to being an employee, or I can just realize I've got nothing else to lose. Just keep working, just keep going, just keep phoning up new clients. And if one of them kicks you out of the office, well, find an office that won't kick you out.
So tell me about that. What happened after that? So you went through this dip and you
well,
looked like there was
So I sort of took the attitude of, well, if you're going through hell, you're better off to just keep going, don't just sit there. So I just kept going with the activities, kept going with the lead messages, kept going with all my passive stack. And then, well, it's only 2 weeks ago, in this course of 4 hours on a Monday, I made 3 sales. And then later on in that week, made another one. And then on Saturday, I got another email straight out of the blue. So we're up to 5 now.
What was the total of that?
So, the total, you're nudging north of $500,000.
Wow.
In revenue. Yeah.
Right. So hit rock bottom. You took the action, took the consistency, got kicked in the teeth a whole bunch of times, considered to keep going.
Yeah.
And then in one fell swoop, like you said, 4 hours, you had 3 in the bag. And then by the end of the week, it was better part of 5.
Yeah.
And now you've got a completely new problem, right? What's that?
Yeah, now I think I said to you the other day, now I actually don't know what to do with myself.
Oh, I'm looking forward to walking through this one over the next couple of weeks and months. This is going to be a fun one to unpack, but we'll leave that for another day.
Sure.
So that's huge, dude. Like, I've just got to acknowledge you for that. It's a massive point to go from where you were to what happened, a month ago, to now have this awesome thing happen in the challenge of, okay, cool. So how do I grow my business from here? So knowing what you know now, what advice would you give to people watching this, guys in the Icon group, people who are considering?
I mean, not that I've got sort of, shares in the dip or anything, but that book did really help me a lot. It's very short. It's not hard to get through, but the reason why I really keep bringing back to that book as a turning point is it talks about when you're going through a really tough time in business, have the good sense to realize, well, is it a dip that you need to get through? Is it some pain you need to work through in order to grow? Or is it actually a dead end? And then sort of really, and I had those conversations in my head of, am I at a dead end, or am I actually doing something that I believe can give value to the industry? And I decided that I believe I could give value. And the second that happened, I just realized, well, don't worry about the fact that you're going to go 3 months or more without work, because as long as you can survive that, you just realize on the other end, you've got some, you've got some exponential growth. And that's exactly what's just happened.
Yeah. Awesome, dude. That's fantastic. And my last question, just before we get out of here, is what's one word that you would describe as far as the Influencer Project process goes and what you've been through?
Yeah. I think probably an interesting word would be worthwhile.
Yeah, okay.
And you can look at that from any angle you want. Be it sort of time, money. I would just use the word worthwhile. Yeah, very, very, very good.
But just one last question. What's one thing you learned about yourself that you didn't know before going through that whole process? Because you're a different guy to what happened back then to now what's happening now.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess I have learned to be a little bit more confident in myself. And I've sort of learned as well to sort of discern things that are happening a little bit better. So to actually realize, well, if someone does throw an insult your way, or someone does tell you, they think your business is shit. That's
or someone punts you.
Or someone, yeah, absolutely. And to just sort of understand the fact that, you can't sort of let one person knock you down if you can see on the other side of it 5 or 10 people who think your business is worthwhile. And you have to just learn to just ignore those people.
Yeah. Awesome. That's fantastic, dude. Really, really cool to see you in this space and what you've put in to get to that point. But thank you very much for your time today, Michael. Really appreciate it, mate. Yeah, and awesome. We'll continue to see the growth.
Yeah, brilliant. Cheers, Max.
Cheers, buddy.